Air France has been in operation since 1933. Its aircraft have been involved in a number of major accidents and incidents. A selected list of the most noteworthy of these events is given below. 1930s. A Juartin D-332 crashed on a flight from Saigon to Paris. The flight crashed at Corbigny, France after flying into a snowstorm, killing all 10 passengers and crew on board. A Wiboto 82T12 crashed into the English Channel off Dungeness, Kent, United Kingdom, killing all 6 people on board. A Golden Clipper crash-landed on a cricket pitch adjacent to Croydon Airport, Surrey, United Kingdom, due to fuel exhaustion. Only one of the 10 people on board was injured. A CAMS 53 disappeared off the coast of Corsica with 6 on board after sending a distress signal. A Lateca Air 300 disappeared off Dakar with 5 on board after the pilot messaged, "We have switched off the rear engine." Aviator Jean Mamos was among the dead. A Pitez 621 crashed at Valence, Drôme in bad weather, killing 2 of 7 on board. A Léoret Olivier H-242/1 crashed at Etang de Ber after striking the breakwater in fog, killing 7 of 14 on board. A Pitez 62 crashed shortly after takeoff from Dum Dum Airport, India, while operating a Hanoi-Calcutta-Paris service, killing all 7 on board. A Pitez 62 crashed near Butzweilerhof Airfield, Germany, killing the 4 crew. A Cordon C-635 Simon crashed into a mountain near Marrakesh, Morocco, killing all 9 on board. A Juartin D-338 crashed near Argana, Morocco due to icing, killing all 9 on board. 1940s. A Block MB-220 struck a mountain near Orange, France in bad weather, killing the 3 crew. A Juartin D-338 was inadvertently shot down by French anti-air fire and crashed near Outram, killing the pilot. A Juartin D-338 was shot down by a Japanese fighter and crashed in the Gulf of Tonkin, killing the 4 crew. A Juartin D-338 crashed at Carnotville, Benin, killing the 3 crew. An SNC 223.4 crashed into the Mediterranean Sea while on a mail flight from Marseille to Beirut and Damascus, killing all 6 passengers and crew on board. The aircraft likely strayed into the battle zone off Cape Spartivento where it was shot down. A Block MB-220 crashed into a lake near Belmonte after an engine failed on takeoff, killing 15 of 17 on board. A Léoret Olivier H-246.1 was attacked by RAF Hawker Hurricane fighters. It managed to land at Algiers but sank after landing, killing 4. A Juartin D-342 crashed after takeoff from Maison Blanche Airport, killing all 25 on board. A Lockheed 14H-2 Super Electra crashed at Aguilhoc, Mali due to engine failure, killing the 3 crew. An Amiate AC-1 was written off at Le Bourget Airport. A Lateca Air 631 flying boat made an emergency landing at Laguna de Rocha, Uruguay. The propeller of the No. 3 engine separated, causing debris to strike the No. 2 engine. A propeller blade penetrated the fuselage, cutting a 3-meter size hole and starting a small fire. 2 passengers died. A Lockheed C-60 Airload Star leased from the Minister of Air crashed 38 miles west of Bangui, Central African Republic, killing all 8 on board. An Amiate AC-1 crashed at Le Bouscat, Bordeaux after striking a church steeple while operating a mail flight, killing both pilots. An Amiate AC-1 struck power lines and crashed near Pau while operating a mail flight, killing both pilots. incidents.A was written off at Le Bourget Airport. A Douglas DC-3A crashed in a field near Køge, Denmark due to an apparent in-flight fire, killing all 22 on board. A Douglas DC-3D lost height on takeoff and crashed into a factory, killing 19 of 26 on board and one person on the ground. Air France's first flight attendant, Paulette Vavasseur, was among the dead. A Douglas C-47A struck Sierra de Sintra while on approach to Lisbon, killing 15 of 16 on board. Incidents.A was written off at Le Bourget Airport. A Douglas C-47A struck Montmouchirolle en route to Lyon from Nice, killing all 23 on board. Incidents.A crashed into high ground near Gémenos, France, killing the 3 crew. Incidents.A was written off at Yoff Airport, Senegal. Air France Flight 612 Incidents.A crashed at Esseka, Cameroon en route to Douala from Yaoundé, killing all 13 on board. Incidents.A was written off at Pau, France. ASNCASH 161 P7 Languedoc crashed at Beaune, Algeria. A Douglas DC-3D struck trees on final approach to Le Bourget Airport, killing all 16 on board. ASNCASH 161 P7 Languedoc crashed into a furniture factory near Paris after an engine was shut down while on a training flight, killing all 9 on board. ASNCASH 161 P7 Languedoc was damaged beyond economical repair at Marignane Airport, Bouches-du-Rhône. ASNCASH 161 P7 Languedoc was damaged beyond economical repair at Orly Airport, Paris. A Douglas DC-4-1009 was being ferried when it crashed on takeoff from Kano, Algeria due to a locked nose wheel, killing 1 of 6 on board. ASNCASH 161 P7 Languedoc crashed at Coulommiers, Voisin's Aerodrome, Seine-et-Marne. A Latécoère Air 631 flying boat disappeared over the Atlantic Ocean with 52 on board. ASNCASH 161 P7 Languedoc crashed at Le Bourget Airport, Paris. ASNCASH 161 P7 Languedoc crashed on takeoff from Toulouse during a test flight due to reverse controls, killing 1 of 5 on board. ASNCASH 161 P7 Languedoc overran the runway at Nice Airport, Alpes Maritimes and was damaged beyond economic repair. Air France Flight 009, a Lockheed L749-79-46 Constellation, struck Redondo Mountain and crashed after 2 attempts to land at the São Miguel Island Airport in the Azores, killing all 48 on board including boxer Marcel Cerdan, violinist Annette Neveu, some members of the Barnum and Amp Bailey Circus and Walt Disney Studios chief merchandiser Kay Carmen. A Douglas C-54A struck a tree on a small hill while on final approach to Lyon and crashed. The aircraft slid in open country and caught fire. 4 crew and 1 passenger died of 38 on board. 1950s. 2 Air France Douglas DC-4s crashed into the sea off Bahrain while landing, with a combined loss of 86 lives. The first accident claimed the lives of 40 of the 53 occupants and the second 46 out of 52. Both aircraft had operated the Karachi, Pakistan, to Bahrain portion of Air France's Saigon, Indochina, Paris sector. The accident investigators concluded that the pilot in command did not maintain his correct altitude until the runway lights became visible during the approach to Bahrain in the first accident, and that the pilot in command did not keep an accurate check of his altitude and rate of descent during the approach procedure in the second accident. incidents.A 161 P7 Languedoc was damaged beyond economic repair when its undercarriage collapsed on landing at Marignan Airport, Marseille. All 31 on board survived. A Douglas DC-4-1009 operating Air France's Douala, Cameroon, to Niamey, Niger, sector hit the 13,354 feet high Cameroon mountain near Bouer, Cameroon, west of Douala, at a height of 8,500 feet. The aircraft was destroyed, killing all 29 occupants. The mountain was probably only partially visible from the flight deck due to the mist surrounding it. Although the pilot immediately turned to the left, the plane hit the steeply rising terrain with its left wing. The accident investigators concluded that the crew followed an inaccurate procedure and relied on imprecise navigation. The investigators furthermore determined that the crew did not check the draft. Moreover, they cited the crew's error of judgment and overconfidence when flying over the mountain mass as additional contributory factors. An Emir TAC-1 crashed at Andapa, Madagascar, killing 6 of 11 on board. incidents.A 161 P7 Languedoc operating a passenger flight from Nice-Le-Var Airport to Paris-Le Bourget Airport crashed shortly after takeoff with the loss of all 38 lives on board. Soon after takeoff from Le Var Airport, the aircraft began banking to the left. This increased progressively until the aircraft flipped over on its back and crashed. The accident investigators attributed the accident to the aircraft's blocked ailerons to the left, as a result of a mechanical fault related to the design. incidents.A 161 P7 Languedoc was damaged beyond economic repair when it overran the runway on takeoff from Le Bourget Airport, Paris. All 23 on board survived. The aircraft was operating an international scheduled passenger flight from Le Bourget to Heathrow Airport, London. A Douglas DC-4 operating a German internal service from Frankfurt Rhine-Main Airport to Berlin Tempelhof Airport came under attack from 2 Soviet MiG-15 fighters while passing through one of the Allied air corridors over East Germany. Although the attack had severely damaged the aircraft, necessitating the shutdown of engines 3 and 4, the pilot landed it safely at West Berlin's Tempelhof Airport, where an inspection revealed that it had been hit by 89 shots fired from the Soviet MiGs during the air attack. There were no fatalities among the 17 occupants. The Soviet military authorities defended this attack on a civilian aircraft by claiming the DC-4 was outside the air corridor at the time of attack. Air France Flight 152, a Lockheed L749A Constellation, ditched 6 miles from Fethiye Point, Turkey, 1.5 miles offshore into the Mediterranean Sea on a flight between Rome and Beirut. Violent vibrations following fracture of a propeller blade caused engine number 3 to break away, and control of engine number 4 was also lost. Vibrations continued with loss of altitude. A crew of 8 in all but 4 of the 34 passengers were rescued. Air France Flight 178, a Lockheed L749A Constellation operating the Paris-Nice portion of a passenger flight to Saigon crashed into Mount Semit, France, with the loss of all 42 lives on board. The accident occurred while the flight deck crew was preparing to land at Nice's Côte d'Azur airport, the aircraft's first scheduled stop. The accident investigation established controlled flight into terrain as the cause. A Lockheed L-1049C Super Constellation flying from Orly Airport to Idlewild Airport Force landed in a field near Preston, Connecticut following fuel exhaustion. All 37 occupants survived. A Lockheed L-749 Constellation was written off after it overran the runway at Gander Airport. All 67 passengers and crew on board survived. A Douglas C-47A struck power lines and crashed on takeoff from Till Airport, reportedly killing 9. A Douglas C-47 struck telephone lines and crashed while on approach to Bron Airport during a mail flight, killing the 3 crew. A Vickers Viscount 708 crashed near Danemois, Ile-de-France, while on a training flight due to an unexplained loss of control, killing all 5 crew on board. A Douglas C-47B operating an Algerian passenger flight from Biskra lost height after takeoff and crashed a mile beyond the airport's runway with the loss of all 32 lives on board, although a source put the death toll at 34. A Douglas C-47A operating a military charter flight from Algiers to Colombes crashed near Molière with the loss of all 15 lives on board. A source put the death toll at 14. Air France Flight 703, a Lockheed L-749A Constellation crashed short of the runway at Schwechat Airport. All 34 on board survived. 1960s. Air France Flight 343, a Lockheed L-1049G Super Constellation operating from Paris to Abidjan via Dakar, crashed into the sea with the loss of all 63 lives on board while the aircraft's crew made a second attempt to land at Dakar's Yoff Airport. The incident was blamed on a tropical wave that would become Hurricane Donna. Air France Flight 406, a Lockheed L-1649A Starline operating the Fort Lamy, Chad, to Marseille portion of Air France's Brazzaville-Paris flight crashed in the Sahara Desert near El Algeria, with the loss of all 78 lives on board. The aircraft was cruising at an altitude of 20,000 feet when its empennage failed. This caused it to break up in flight. The accident investigators believed that the empennage separated from the rest of the aircraft as a result of the detonation of a nitrocellulose explosive device. A Boeing 707 en route from Paris to Lima caught fire while landing at Lisbon Portela de Sacavém as a result of a burst tire. Although only 3 out of 109 passengers were slightly injured and most of the baggage, cargo and mail was salvaged, hundreds of chickens on the way to a farm in Central America did not survive the accident. Air France Flight 272, a Boeing 707-328 operating the polar route from Paris Orly via Hamburg and Anchorage to Tokyo Haneda veered to the left and ran off the runway at Hamburg Fuhlsbüttel, coming to rest 2,840 meters from the starting point in depression containing a building site 140 meters from the runway. The accident, which occurred while the aircraft was departing Fuhlsbüttel for Anchorage, severely damaged the aircraft, splitting the fuselage in 2 places ahead of the wings. As a result, 10 of 41 occupants sustained serious injuries. Air France Flight 2005, a Sud Aviation Shay 210 Caravelle 3 operating a Paris-Orly-Rabat Casablanca service crashed near Rabat's airport with the loss of all 77 lives on board. At the time of the accident, meteorological conditions in the local area were thick, low fog. The poor weather conditions reduced horizontal visibility and ceiling. The pilot informed ATC that he wanted to attempt a breakthrough over the NDB. The aircraft was destroyed by fire when it impacted the ground, killing everyone on board. The accident investigators cited the commander's error in reading his instruments as the most likely cause. Air France Flight 007, a chartered Boeing 707-328 Château de Sully, flying from Orly Airport, Paris, France, to Atlanta's Hartsfield-Jackson Airport, crashed at Orly during takeoff. 130 out of 132 people on board were killed. 2 flight attendants sitting in the rear section of the aircraft were saved. The investigation found a faulty servo motor, which had led to an improper elevator trim. Brake marks measuring 1,500 feet were found on the runway, indicating that the flight deck crew tried to abort takeoff. The aircraft rolled right while only 7 feet from the ground, causing its right wing to hit the ground. It crashed 50 yards from the runway and exploded. Of the passengers, 106 were Atlanta art patrons who had finished a tour of European capitals. And Uri Abrams, the author of Explosion at Orly, the true account of the disaster that transformed Atlanta, described the incident as Atlanta's version of Sept. 11 in that the impact on the city in 1962 was comparable to New York of Sept. 11. This was the deadliest crash in Air France history until the crash of Air France Flight 447. Air France Flight 117, operated with a Boeing 707-328, crashed into a forest on a hill at an altitude of about 4,000 feet during bad weather, while attempting to land at Point Pita in Guadeloupe, killing all 113 on board. The aircraft was attempting a non-precision NDB approach. A malfunctioning VOR station and poor NDB reception due to thunderstorms were blamed for the accident. The airframe had accumulated only 985 hours of flying at the time of the accident. After that crash, Air France pilots criticized underdeveloped airports with facilities that were ill-equipped to handle jet aircraft, such as Guadeloupe's airport. Air France Flight 212, a Boeing 707-328C operating a Caracas Point Pita service, hit the southern slope of La Soufriere Mountain at an altitude of 3,937 feet, 27.5 kilometers SSW of Le Raizé Airport, with the loss of all 63 lives on board. When ATC had cleared the flight deck crew for a visual approach to Le Raizé's runway 11, the crew had reported the airfield in sight. Flight 212 started to descend from FL90 and passed St. Claude at an altitude of about 4,400 feet. The accident investigators cited the probable cause as a visual approach procedure at night in which the descent was begun from an incorrectly identified point. Charlie Juliet had flown for 33 hours since coming off the Boeing production line, and was on her second revenue service. Air France Flight 1611, of Sud Aviation Chez 210 Caravelle 3 operating Ajaccio, Corsica, Nice service, crashed into the sea near Captain Tibes off Nice with the loss of all 95 lives on board. The accident occurred while the flight deck crew attempted an emergency landing at Côte d'Azur Airport, following the detection of a fire in the aircraft's rear cabin 21 minutes after takeoff from Ajaccio. The accident investigators believed that the fire had started in the right lavatory and galley area. In 2011, a former French army soldier alleged that he saw a report that a missile shot down the aircraft. Air France Flight 212, a Boeing 707-328B operating a Caracas Point-a-Pita service crashed into the sea shortly after takeoff from Simon Bolivar International Airport, with the loss of all 62 on board. 1970s. Air France Flight 193, a Boeing 747-128 operating the sector between Bombay and Tel Aviv to Paris Charles de Gaulle Airport, was destroyed by fire on the ground at Bombay's Santa Cruz Airport, following an aborted takeoff. The aircraft's tire on its right-hand main undercarriage had failed while the flight deck crew was executing a 180-degree turn at the beginning of Santa Cruz Airport's runway 27. When the flight deck crew began its takeoff run, another tire failed. At that point, the plane's wheels and braking assembly came into contact with the runway, starting a fire. A crew aborted takeoff. The ensuing delay in shutting down the engines, as well as the improper deployment of the airport's fire service, caused the fire to spread, leading to the plane's total destruction. There were no fatalities among the 394 occupants. Operation Entebbe. On the 27th of June 1976, an Airbus A300 operating as Flight 139 from Tel Aviv to Paris via Athens was hijacked shortly after departing Athens. After refueling in Benghazi, Libya, the hijackers demanded it be flown to Entebbe, Uganda. One hostage was freed in Benghazi, and in Uganda another 155 non-Israeli and/or non-Jewish hostages were released. The flight crew remained with the hostages after Captain Barkos insisted he was responsible for them. After several days of negotiating and diplomatic interventions, Israel launched a commando raid into Entebbe to free them. During the assault, all 6 of the hijackers were killed, as were 3 hostages. The leader of the assault, Yoni Netanyahu, was also killed. One hostage, 75-year-old Dora Bloch, was unaccounted for. She had been taken to Malago Hospital prior to the assault and later killed on Idi Amin's orders. Air France Flight 54, a Concorde suffered a tire burst on takeoff en route to Paris. 2 tires burst, with the subsequent shrapnel piercing the wing, which consequently began to leak fuel. A crew did not notice this until a passenger alerted the cabin crew to a hole in the wing. When noticing this, the crew immediately reduced thrust and landed at Dulles Airport for a closer inspection. A similar issue led to Air France Flight 4590 21 years later, which had a fatality count of 113 people. 1980s. Air France Flight 171, a Boeing 747, suffered an explosion in the cargo hold en route from Karachi, Pakistan, to Dhahran, Saudi Arabia. Shortly after departing Karachi, blew a hole in the right rear cargo hold. The resulting loss of cabin pressure necessitated an immediate descent of 5,000 feet. The aircraft returned to Karachi without any fatalities among the 261 occupants. Air France Flight 091, a Boeing 747-228B, veered off the runway on landing at the Rio de Janeiro Galeão International Airport, crossed a ditch and collided with a concrete ramp. There were no fatalities or injuries among the 250 passengers and 23 crew. The aircraft was scrapped. Air France Flight 296, Airbus A320-111 crashed near Mulhouse-Hasheim Airport, in the French region of Alsace. The accident occurred during an airshow while the flight deck crew was performing a fly-past at low height and speed. The aircraft overflew flew the airfield in good weather. Seconds later, the aircraft struck treetops behind the runway and crashed into a forest, as a result of flying too low and too slowly. 3 passengers died and about 50 were injured. 1990s. Air France Flight 072, a Boeing 747-428B registered F-Waiter skidded out of runway 22 at Tahiti FAA International Airport, Papeete, French Polynesia. No fatalities reported. Air France Flight 8969, an Airbus A300B21C was hijacked at Houari Boumediene Airport in Algiers by 4 terrorists who belonged to the armed Islamic group. The terrorists apparently intended to crash the plane over the Eiffel Tower on Boxing Day, after a failed attempt to leave Marseille following a confrontational firefight between the terrorists and the GIGN French Special Forces. The result was the death of all 4 terrorists. 3 hostages, including a Vietnamese diplomat, were executed. 229 hostages survived, many of them wounded by shrapnel. The almost 15-year-old aircraft was written off. During Air France Flight 437, turbulence caused injuries to 30 people on a Boeing 747 in mid-air going from Johannesburg to Paris. 1 passenger died later from injuries received from an in-flight film projection screen. Air France Flight 422, the Air France flight from Bogotá's El Dorado Airport to Quito, using an aircraft wet leased from Tame, crashed into a mountain near Bogotá. All 43 passengers and 10 crew died. Although not an Air France plane, the flight was the final segment of an Air France flight originating in Paris. Air France Flight 6745, an ex-Uta Boeing 747-2B3F freighter carrying a revenue load of 66 tons of cargo from Paris Charles de Gaulle to Madras, India crash-landed, caught fire and burned out. Madras ATC had cleared the aircraft for an ILS approach to the airport's runway 07. A crew abandoned the approach due to technical difficulties. The aircraft circled to attempt a second approach, and at the end of the second approach, the aircraft's nose struck the runway while touching down because its nose gear was either not down or not locked. The plane skidded and came to rest 7,000 feet down the 13,050-foot runway. After it had come to a standstill, the crew noticed smoke on the flight deck and began to extinguish the flames. Soon after, flames erupted in the aircraft's front section. 1 crew member managed to escape from the flight deck via a rope ladder. The remaining 4 crew members were rescued by the airport fire service from the rear, before the flames engulfed the entire aircraft. The fire service was unable to extinguish the fire and the aircraft burned out.